So we're going to move on to our next guest now. And, yesterday we had Mark Mitchell on, and we were talking about the new roadside drug testing, and I've read a bit into it. And the crime that the police are trying to stop is driving while impaired. And I asked Minister Mitchell, the question, why don't we have an impairment test then? Because the new roadside drug testing regime tests for all sorts of things that you might be prescribed or take in the normal course of things. Of course, the headline is that it'll stop people having meth and pee and marijuana and cocaine and stuff, but tramadol, all sorts of other things that are components in some medications are in there. So I kind of asked the minister, how do you know if someone had a joint 3 days ago, are they actually impaired from driving? Well, they shouldn't be driving, they shouldn't be smoking cannabis. Well, we had someone come in who's taking cannabis every night on prescription for sleeping. So they're going to get pinged by this. And I really asked the question, why don't we just have an impairment test that everyone gets? But the minister didn't get it. We ended up, I think it would be fair to say, talking at cross purposes. But a number of you said I had a point. And I'm wondering the organisation that is involved in reducing harm from drugs, though it is an organisation often criticised for accepting the fact that people take them and for having, testing whether or not illicit drugs are going to kill people at rock concerts. The New Zealand Drug Foundation, their executive director is Sarah Helm, and Sarah joins us on the line now. Sarah, thanks for coming on. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. No problem.
Hey, really interesting. And look, I think at first blush for any social conservative, roadside drug testing, great idea. That's great. That'll stop the degenerates and everything. But as I got further into looking at this issue, it is slightly problematic, isn't it?
It is complicated. The science is the problem here. So I don't think Liberal or Conservative or anything in the middle, anyone wants impaired drivers on the road. I think we're all committed to that. It's just the science doesn't exactly stack up. There have been some things that the government have tried to do in their defence to make this work a bit better, so happy to speak to that a bit.
All right, okay, tell us. Okay,
I agree with you on the impairment
first
testing.
Tell us, they've already set limits for what the test, what current chemistry or whatever the test is, can detect, right? How is that related to whether or not a level of any particular drug impairs your driving?
It's not that's partly what we're actually not sure about and have asked. So basically the test, there's three tests involved. So you're given a saliva test at the roadside. If any THC, i.e. cannabis, MDMA, methamphetamine or cocaine is detected, they then give you a second saliva test.
At the scene?
If you fail that saliva test, at the scene.
At the scene.
So everyone who fails that first test, it gets sent off to the lab. We'll come back to that in a second. If you fail that second test, you then have your driver's license taken off you immediately for 12 hours, or your car. You can't drive for 12 hours. The saliva goes off for a proper test at the lab, and that's where all those other tests come in. So you basically have to have had one of those four substances detected. Now, as you've rightly pointed out, wherever, even if you think no one should be taking drugs any other time, some people legitimately are taking cannabis for prescription purposes. I take CBD isolate, doesn't have any THC in it, for arthritis. Amazing for me. I can walk. Right. It's amazing. But that test shouldn't theoretically, and I'm reassured by my colleagues, won't be picked up.
Okay. Let me just check then. I just want to get this absolutely clear. So you do a first test, you fail for, and what can be perceived in that first test is, what was it? THC, cannabis, methamphetamine and cocaine. Okay, so those are the...
And MDMA, yeah.
And MDMA, so they come up immediately. If you fail that, you then have to have a second roadside saliva test?
Yes. Now,
and it's the same, is it the same test?
So that's why they're giving you the second one.
Sorry, what was that?
I believe so.
Yeah.
The reason they're giving you the second one is to prevent any false positives. Nonetheless, your saliva is still sent off to the lab, and you might have one of those medications detected.
Okay, but you lose your licence if you fail the second test on the spot for 12 hours.
Just for 12 hours. But as you can imagine, you think you've done the right thing, you've taken your medication as prescribed. That could be quite a severe penalty for somebody who this happens often to, because they say they have a disability, or, like me, I'm a mum and I'm working and trying to get back to the kids and so forth. So that sort of thing. The thing that they've tried to do, which we're waiting for better information about, is set the thresholds high so that it only detects recent use. Now, we're not aware of the science that supports that, but we understand that is the hard work that the officials and their scientists and whoever they've had involved have tried to do to not pick up people who have used recently. We hope they're right about that, and what we've asked for is some of those saliva tests so that people can, because we want people to obey the law just so that they're not driving impaired, firstly. Secondly, so that they can navigate the law for themselves, you know what I mean, and work out, make sure that they're not impaired.
But
and they're not
THC stays in your system famously long, right? After you've had cannabis.
72 hours.
72 hours.
For example.
Okay.
Yeah. And, with the other drugs, we don't want them taking them, et cetera, but if they take them and they're trying not to drive impaired, we don't want them to be punished for that either. We want to encourage people not to be driving impaired.
Okay, now what is the penalty for driving impaired? $450 fine and demerit points, is my understanding.
Yeah.
And for not doing the test.
$200 fine and 50 demerit points.
Yeah, and for not taking the test.
$400 if you've got two.
Yeah. And, and it's $400 fine or $500 fine, something like that, if you refuse to take the test, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
now,
okay.
If you refuse to take the test and they take a sample off, if you fail an impairment test and go down the other path that they can take, you can end up with criminal charges. So not taking the test is kind of not really an option.
Okay. But is it like drink driving where you can lose your licence for months, or is it like a arbitrary ticket and demerit points?
It's an arbitrary ticket and demerit points.
So it's not quite, we're not taking it quite as seriously as booze driving, right?
Well, I think that's because the confidence around the science isn't there. Okay. Otherwise, I think they probably would go further.
I'm going to suggest, and I don't know if you want to take it up, and here's another thing that might just make it. It does seem to me that the science is dodgy and we're kind of pushing this past where the science goes. Shouldn't you, when you fail that second test on the roadside and you pinged for the $450 or the $200 fine and the demerit points, shouldn't police then give you an impairment test before deciding to take your licence off you for 12 hours?
Sean, that is exactly what we said in our submission to the Select Committee.
Yeah.
We said, fail the saliva test. It's a good way of picking up screen. So, because one of the complaints that police have is that the impairment test takes too long, and it's a faff. Now, we're also aware of some technology. Well, I'll come back to that. Even if we're just doing a physical impairment test like the old days, and somebody has to get out of their car and walk a line or whatever it is,
touch their nose with their finger.
You're not going to pick up that. You're not going to pick up that many people that are impaired that you couldn't do that through the saliva test. So that to us certainly would give you confidence that your licence should be removed for 12 hours. Like that would make sense.
Yeah.
And you should have some more testing. But the other thing is, two other things with that. So there is technology developing quickly, and we have been working with a couple of companies, but one in particular that we're relatively impressed with for workplace drug testing. So instead of drug testing, doing impairment testing, picks up a bigger range of substances so that you're not encouraging people to just dodge the test and take synthetic cannabinoids, for example, which are way worse for you, etc. So number one, and then you're also just encouraging people to, be well enough to fit for work, as we would say, or fit for driving on this purpose, rather than focused on this 4 substances and evading the law. So this technology, we understand, is getting closer for roadside. And when we met with some people several months ago about it, this is the commercial operator. The science might not be there, as you say, but they reckon that they were 80% accurate at roadside. And it's a 30-second on your phone activity. It's quite fast, and you don't have to get out of the car. So to give, actually no, maybe you do have to get out of the car. I won't say that. Because I know
all
one of the
right. So what we would do then, we would
leg.
filter out with the 2 saliva tests, the drug stuff, and then you could say every time you gave an impairment test, you were actually focusing that test on the people who'd failed the 2 saliva tests. That would make sense to me. But then if you weren't impaired by the test...
evidence.
What? Yeah. But if you weren't impaired by the test...
some other evidence of impairment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there was no evidence of impairment then... Wouldn't you turn around and say, I'm not going to pay you a silly fine because I wasn't impaired? You tested me for it and I wasn't.
Well, that would be probably the right thing.
Yeah, so what we really should have is a regime where if the police choose to put a swab in your mouth and then you come up for cocaine, MDMA, THC, you get a second test, and then they give you an impairment test. And if you pass the impairment test, it's all over. You're on your way. Because they can't use this as a way to spy on whether or not people have taken drugs. Well, they shouldn't. That's just
or medications.
Yeah.
Because it's quite, there are some medications on the list you wouldn't necessarily want on your police record that are to do with
I don't think the police under privacy have got a right to hold my medical records. They haven't got a right to hold any information about me if I haven't been involved in a crime. And this is a misdemeanor offence. So it seems to me, actually, Sarah, the more I talk about this and the more I think about this, the more problematic it becomes.
Yeah, look, we're trying to be really open-minded and waiting for more information. Like we've been told that we might be able to get our hands on these devices, which would be really helpful, as I say, to help people obey the law. We've also been told we might be able to hear from them what they think the windows of detection will be. So how long somebody should refrain from driving, whether, we know how long people should refrain from driving based on medical advice, etc., but based on when they would be detected. And we just haven't had that information yet, which makes it really tricky. And I completely agree with you. An impairment approach would address this, and we thought it was a really good suggestion at Select Committee. We thought they might even go for it because it just feels like a really sensible way of avoiding these problems.
A lot of people have asked me too, do they keep the swabs? Do they keep your DNA?
I don't imagine so. But I'm happy to ask
look, I don't know. A lot of things have gone on with the police lately. Geez, you'd have to trust them. I'd like that to be explicit as well. And it's not. I've been convicted of drink driving, but I no longer, and I did when I was younger do that, and I've got nothing to worry about here. But it just seems to me this is quite a. This is an area in terms of civil liberty that we need to keep an eye on. There
have been problems in Australia with this regime, and the New Zealanders have tried to have a different threshold in order to avoid some of the problems that they've had. So fingers crossed they have got that right, but I agree with you. There's a bunch of things to keep an eye on with it.
Sarah, I also just want to ask you, we've got, the holidays are almost upon us, if only the weather would settle down. We're into the time of, I call them music concerts, music events. Young people in particular gathering together to have a wild time. And, of course, let's not be naive, consuming drugs. Are you going to be doing the drug testing at festivals and stuff, things again? Is that back on this year or these holidays? Yeah,
there's a few providers that do it. We're one of them. We're doing the Rhythm and Vines Festival is the one that we go to. And another one that happens in Auckland. So absolutely doing that.
Okay, and one other just general question, and I don't know whether you research it. Is illicit drug use up or down in New Zealand?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've had a massive, this is the real problem with our drug regime. So we've had a massive increase in the volume of drugs being consumed, particularly methamphetamine and actually cocaine. Cocaine now surpasses MDMA, which is quite an extraordinary change.
Okay, and this is done by
18
measuring
months of
wastewater,
change.
isn't it? Is this done on the
which is
wastewater
great that
step?
we have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is also some surveying of humans, and the surveying of humans seems to suggest not a lot more people taking these things. It's people taking it much, much more often.
Okay, so people who are using drugs are really getting
so
into it. Yeah.
really getting into it, and will be starting to experience significant problems.
And boy, do they, addiction is just one of the issues we deal with. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. I do think that the country needs to keep an eye on this, and I'm really interested to see how the rollout is progressing. So I thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
No worries at all. Take
Cheers.
care. Right.
Sarah Helm, the Executive Director of the New Zealand Drug Foundation. And I'm not saying I want people drug driving or driving impaired, but do you see the issues I'm talking about here? And I think we might be ahead of the technology. Just my feeling.